Today is a workshop for a discussion regarding an amendment to Chapter 23 zoning of the Code of Ordinance of North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, defining pervious and impervious surfaces, creating an exception for swimming pools. Will we ask the clerk to please call the roll?
Yeah. Mayor Hatley?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Baldwin?
Here.
Councilman Collins?
Here.
Councilman Coyne?
Here.
Councilwoman Fontana? Councilman Skidmore?
Here.
Councilman Thomas? Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. I will now turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is basically a follow-up to our conversation we had on our August 18th meeting where put before council was an ordinance to not really change anything, but better define what impervious and pervious surfaces are in terms of how they're applied in our local regulations. So it was really just to clear it up and clearly define those, in addition to the impervious surface ratio. And based on the language that planning and development put together, it actually raised more questions than it did offer any clarity. So this workshop is for us to kind of have a deeper conversation about what it is, and I'm going to turn that over to Suzanne so she can kind of elaborate.
I've got a brief presentation to go over these materials. Just a brief introduction. Pervious surfaces, the majority of the rain flows through the soil into the groundwater, not into the sewer. Impervious surface, it flows along the pavement into the sewer with dirt and debris. It's channelized, it's put into pipes. In our district, in our zoning districts, and this only applies really to residential development because larger development goes through site plan and it meets all those requirements on the state level, I believe. But R1, the maximum impervious surface ratio is 40%. R1A, it's 45%. R1B is 50%. R2, you have 50% for single family. All the others, you have 60%. R2A is 60% is the lowest, and then multifamily can go up to 80% impervious. R2B is 60% impervious. R3, single family and mobile homes, those are limited to 50% impervious. Semi-detached, duplex, and other uses are 60. R4, again, you get the 60% and the multifamily at 80%. And R4I, which I don't believe we have districts, but we don't have any of that construction really. That's 75%. The current ordinance defines impervious surface as those. Impervious surfaces are those that do not absorb rain. All building, parking areas, driveways, roads, sidewalks, and any areas in concrete and asphalt shall be considered impervious surfaces within this definition. In addition, other areas determined by the zoning administrator to be impervious within the meaning of this definition will also be classed as impervious surfaces. Impervious surface ratio. The impervious surface ratio is a measure of the intensity of land use. It is determined by dividing the total area of all impervious surfaces within the site by the total site area. So a couple of problems with the impervious surface definition. There is pervious concrete. There is pervious asphalt now. Those materials should not just be categorically determined to be impervious. And then also the implementation of those definitions. We are proposing a new definition for impervious, a surface that prevents or significantly impedes the infiltration of stormwater into the ground. This includes, but is not limited to, roofs, buildings, concrete, asphalt, pool decks, patios, compacted gravel, and pavers not meeting the definition of a pervious surface. Surfaces shall be considered impervious unless demonstrated otherwise in accordance with the performance criteria that we also later defined. And then we're adding that pool exception because zoning has interpreted many years that pools are pervious. They are not pervious, but they've interpreted it that. And we recognize that pools are a really great element to have here, so we don't want to restrict that. And then we provide a definition for pervious, a surface designed and installed to allow for stormwater infiltration. Basically, this install system must achieve a minimum infiltration rate of 2 inches per hour. Applicants must submit manufacturer specifications and/or construction details demonstrating the installation method required to meet this standard. That would be upfront with the permit submittal. And then permits for pervious surface systems are subject to inspection to verify proper installation of base materials and other components in accordance with the approved specifications. They're also responsible for maintaining the surface to ensure that performance over time. And then this is the new section that we're adding, standards for pervious surfaces for single-family and duplex residents, not subject to site-specific development plan review. And this basically gets down to that standard of 2 inches per hour based on manufacturer testing or accepted industry standards. It needs to be installed according to those specifications, including the base materials and the methods. And we're just clarifying that those permits are subject to inspection to confirm that installation. And then we also, again, reiterate that exemption for pool basins in this new section. We decided on 2 inches per hour because it's a low achievable rate. Many systems can far exceed that number. Sullivan's Island recently went through a whole workshop series trying to get to a number, and they settled on 2 inches per hour. There's so many factors that go into this based on, subsurface conditions and things, but if you're installing a 2 inch per hour pervious system, it's meeting the minimum standards, we believe. It balances consistency and enforceability with flexibility for everyone, and it kind of prevents subjective decision-making here. This is a simple diagram showing what makes a material pervious. You can have pervious concrete, pervious asphalt, pervious pavers. They have a bedding course. They have an aggregate base of some depth. They may have an underdrain that may be required. They may have a geotextile that separates them from the subgrade that's uncompacted. So all the details for all the materials look something like this. Traditional concrete is impervious. Pervious concrete can be 10 to 100 inches per hour. It can infiltrate. Traditional asphalt is impervious. Pervious asphalt can be 10 to 100 inches per hour. Traditional pavers on a sand base, that's impervious, but you can have pervious pavers. Again, the numbers vary greatly based on your subsurface conditions, but they all exceed our minimum. Grasscrete pavers also. Artificial turf on compacted fill is completely impervious, but if you install it on that system, you can get 14 to 500, the manufacturers say 500 plus per hour. Compacted gravel, less than 1 inch per hour, but if you use an open graded gravel system where the fines have been separated from that gravel, you can get 10 to 50 inches per hour. That's just a run through of the materials.
On the pavers, you showed several pictures of pavers. That one right there, that's your standard paver?
That's a pervious paver.
It is?
It's a Unilock product that they manufacture. it comes in many styles, but the voids are large enough and they specify a detail for the base layer. It's probably 8 inches or some thickness. The voids are what's pervious.
So the paver itself
Is not
is not
pervious.
pervious, but the way it's installed with the
It's installed.
subgrade
I got you.
and the voids in between, that's what makes it pervious.
And a lot of those have like a little
Looks like a tab
stub or
almost,
a piece that bumps it out, so it's not like a traditional like brick paver where it's, absolute pure rectangle. It comes down, it's got essentially a built-in spacer into
Stop
it.
it
So
from
yeah,
moving.
it's pretty, it's pretty idiot-proof for that matter. It can only go together so tight, and then that void is what creates the pervious part of it, provided they put the right base below it and then the right infill sand grouting or.
Do you have, we have a standard of what's underneath these pavers?
All the manufacturers have different standards. There's a variety of cost and they all look something like this diagram. You'd have a bedding layer for pavers, and then you'd have the aggregate layer underneath it. But it's readily available from the manufacturer as a spec sheet that anybody could upload with their permit application.
Would the consideration be what you're putting it on, if it's clay or if it's sand?
Not using this, it's just as long as it's installed to the specs shown by the manufacturer, if it's, that would meet our requirement.
inches.
Do we inspect that base?
We would be, yeah.
Okay.
And I,
One thing you'll notice is that even the lowest performing standard of these materials is 5 times what the requirement would be to meet that 2 inches per hour. So if it's installed properly, it's not going to be a barrier to meeting that requirement.
Well, should we change our 2 inches per hour?
We feel like, given the variety of subsurface conditions here, that's just, if someone is going to the point of selecting a material that is pervious, they're going through and installing it to those manufacturer specifications, we feel like that's a much better place to be in than where we are today.
The only thing that and it's like I spoke on, and me and Suzanne were in 2 different places. You were talking more on material during the council meeting, and I was talking more about the aggregate or the base material under the paver, because I called Belgard, who is the main manufacturer of pavers probably in this area and everywhere else, and they have 3 different style of pavers. They have their traditional paver, and then they have the permeable paver and the porous paver. All of these pavers, except for the permeable paver, are pretty much 0 infiltration rate. It's all about the install process.
Right.
And so to me, I think we should be focusing more on that, making sure that it's installed to the manufacturer's spec and not get on the weeds of everything else, because at the end of the day, for them to get their warranty and get the flow rate that they're supposed to get, they've got to install it by the manufacturer's spec. And from what I'm understanding, you're going to require them to provide the spec that the manufacturer is calling for, and it even tells you the infiltration rate as long as they install it to that spec.
Correct.
Because the paver itself is not pervious.
Yeah, that's the entire intent, is to put the burden on, not the burden, put the obligation on the property owner to show us the specification that the manufacturer says that will work, and that we will inspect to make sure that it's put in that way, and then that way we know it's going to be up.
Because one of my main fears when I saw pavers, you have to, as you were speaking, that the paver itself met that infiltration rate. Well, I automatically knew it wouldn't. And 9 times out of 10, the pools in Cherry Grove and Windy Hill and Crescent Beach have pavers around them. And the only one that would actually meet that flow rate is the one that has grass, or it's got the open cavities. But if anybody here has a pool, you don't want to have grass all around your pool. So that was my fear during the council meeting, that we were focusing on the material itself and not the way it's installed.
Right now, anything that is termed pavers on an application gets approved as pervious.
Right.
And we know that that's not, pavers are being installed on concrete, and it's not pervious at all.
And that's not okay, and that's, even the manufacturer wouldn't agree with that,
Yeah.
the
So-
install process.
We're just trying to, okay, so if you submit a permit for a material and your manufacturer says if it's installed correctly, it meets anything above 2 inches per hour, then we can go ahead and say, yes, this is a pervious material, and it won't count towards your impervious ratio for your site.
and that also goes back to, I know there was some people had concerns about, it's going to go up and down, it ruts out. But, basically their base is engineered to withstand a certain amount of traffic and a certain amount of weight, and that limit's going to be a lot more than you'd normally have with cars or trucks going in. Probably not something that a tractor trailer or dump truck could pull up on. Might not have that capacity, but basically that whole system is designed to work as one piece, one unit, not, right now we're kind of doing, we're taking a little this and taking a little that, and that works and we're done. But, and y'all done a good job, because the other thing that's key in here on this, on the second, in the new standards, on the second paragraph, standards for pervious material, is item C, be installed according to the manufacturer's specifications, including the base materials and installation methods to achieve the performance. So that pretty well takes the it takes the cheating out of it, I guess is the polite way to put it.
We would have
And that's what we're
to,
trying to achieve.
we would have to verify that it's installed to those standards. That would be on us.
So what is that process like? I mean,
It would be just an inspection added to the inspection schedule that
after it's done?
before, or probably before, during the process, after the base is laid, to make sure that it's correct. I don't know, Public Works may have some input on that, too.
Step, at what point do you, we just got to make sure that the ground's not compacted before they put the stone on it. Maybe some filter fabric or whatnot, based on the manufacturer's detail. I mean, I don't know if we could put this on the screen. Okay. It's all right. I mean, I could show this, but, a typical, this is a Bellegarde pamphlet that I pulled out the back room, and it's basically got a 1.5 to 2 inch type 8 aggregate, and then a 4 inches of 57 stone as a base, and you can get more elaborate, you can get under drains like you saw, but for what we're looking at in the residential area, I mean, something that's going to allow some infiltration is what we're after, not just an impervious surface.
But basically, at the base inspection, what should be no different than if you were paving a street.
Right.
You know, same part before you put the asphalt on, and because, once the paver's on, it's over with.
Right.
Essentially somebody could take a half a gallon of water and pour it out, and if it runs off, then it might not be in there right, and if it goes in the ground, you're pretty well there. Not to oversimplify it, but I
We
mean.
expect, heavier rainfalls, it's going to fill up and it's going to overflow, but for the
Right,
typical
but
rain, it's going to
normal-
capture the first flush, basically, and that's what we're after.
Kind of like the picture of the dump truck dumping the water out going into the
Exactly.
pervious concrete.
So there's a typical section, I don't know, that's from Bellegarde's pamphlet. In the sheet before, flip it over, that shows those tabs like Mr. Corn was talking about. It's a little closer up picture of what those pavers look like. They got little tabs to keep them spaced where you can get the aggregate in and whatnot. And there's other examples where they have a fire truck on them, so they can be built to sustain heavy traffic if needed.
That model or picture you just showed prior to this one that showed the base courses, I was trying to read that. That's like 57 stone, and then it's got like a crushed aggregate on top.
Right.
Like crush and run, which is typically what is used with pavers anyway, that last course. Typically, that's usually all they use without even the 57 stone, right?
Typically, yes. The crushed aggregate, what we see is they use a crushed granite, which actually becomes impervious after they compact it. So
Right.
something a little bit more, larger stone to allow infiltration.
But
It's
you're
basically
still,
used as a leveling course to put your pavers on.
right, because you can't obviously level the pavers on 57
That's
stone.
right. In this picture, it's got another base of 8 inches of 2-inch stone, or number 2 stone. That's probably getting a little more than what we would need in a residential application.
Right,
That's more of a parking lot type setup.
gotcha.
Okay. Any other questions?
If someone's adding pavers to their existing driveway, this would not affect that? Like, if you build a house and you just had the plain cement, then you want to come around with decorative.
Well, I would say if they're just repairing an existing paver driveway.
No, just adding.
Oh, adding pavers, okay, like a decorative thing?
Right,
Like a
border.
decorative border around a driveway?
Yes.
Well, I think that's an even easier solution because, I mean, it's real simple to make that comply with the 2 inches an hour.
How would you know that they're doing it? Do they require a permit?
Yeah, it would. I think it would, I'm trying to think if it requires a permit now for
I
something
don't think
that
it
small.
does.
Technically, it does require a permit. A lot of people just make it a weekend thing, and they don't think they have to have a permit, but, we deal with that on a lot of different issues. But really, this amendment fixes two key problems with our existing way we handle this. Key problem number one is that we just blanket label pavers as pervious, and we all know that that's not necessarily the case. What's really going on underneath is what determines whether it's pervious or not. So that it solves that problem. It also solves the problem of pretending that swimming pools are pervious. We're acknowledging that they're not, but we're also exempting them from the calculation to make sure that we don't regulate them out of existence in areas where they're deemed to be desirable.
So in no situation do y'all see as a staff where y'all would override the install specs of the process of the paver as long as that process shows the infiltration rate of more than 2 inches an hour?
Yes, I think if they wanted to do an alternate system, and if they could get an engineer to certify that it meets the 2 inches per hour, that would be fine. It's really, it's what we rely on their engineering to specify that they meet that infiltration rate, and we're not going to second guess that if they certify that.
So essentially, they'll have to justify it.
Do you include pavers as part of the landscape? I mean, like I know there's houses that have pavers, their whole front yard is pavers.
Right.
And they may have 4 feet or 5 feet of grass and trees, palm trees down on the side.
Yeah.
So how do you get by with that?
Well, if they install anything on their property that affects that pervious-impervious surface ratio, whether it's intended for driveway use or not, it would still have to meet that standard.
I think that's it.
Okay.
Everybody through?
Yeah,
Any other
thank you,
questions?
because we were
Yeah,
just a bit
thank y'all
confused.
for the presentation.
on,
Is there anyone in the audience? I'll open it up for a couple of comments. Anyone in the audience? What? Yeah, you'll have to come then.
Susan Platt, 942 South Ocean Boulevard. Thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you, staff, because this was brought up in 2018, 2019. Fred's shaking his head. I know. But I have a question. Okay, so are we grandfathering in? Because my home was built in the 1940s, and my husband and I talk about all the time digging up our concrete driveway because we know the importance living right across the street from the ocean, Pervious and Impervious. Some cities, I don't know, this may be for staff going on, you can grandfather in the ones that they are, but there are other cities that offer incentives for reducing your amount of pervious on your property. So I would just like to bring that up, because again, in 2018, 2019, this came up, and I think Asheville was one of the examples that we cited. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, David Prince, 1311 Holly Drive. just a couple things I wanted to say is, I know the 2 inches per hour, and it seems to me like there's a lot of complications to just saying 2 inches per hour, because, you know, I don't know what, say, Bellegarde or some of these folks are, you know, their design, you know, we start looking here at 8 inches of number 2 stone, 4 inches of 57 stone. I mean, what infiltration rate are they trying to get to? And, you know, what subgrade are they looking at when they start this, or what time period are they looking at to try to get this infiltration rate or that infiltration rate? I mean, we know we can set up a lab here and pretty much create any infiltration rate we want, but in reality, I mean, like a 0.8 inches per hour infiltration rate on soil is considered a pretty good infiltration rate as far as infiltration goes. I see this ordinance written a lot like some others. It just leaves a lot of facts out. And one of them is, you know, if you're going to eliminate the soil criteria, it needs to say that we're going to eliminate the soil criteria. If we're going to allow, say, a 4-inch graded base on clay and we're going to allow it on sand, it needs to say that. It doesn't need to just leave that open for, you know, 10 years down the road, somebody come up and say, well, they need to get a test on this soil, and you got a $2,500 perk test to see what the soil, you know, rate perks at. I mean, it just needs to state that. If we're going to eliminate the soil condition, let's state that we're going to eliminate it. Don't leave that open as well, you know. And another thing is, back a few years ago, I kind of when this, I guess some of the impervious pervious started being forced a little more than it was. I got into a situation and we, you know, the question was the material we put down pervious or impervious? And we ended up taking like 3 water hoses and running it out there, and, you know, when it got to one crack, it would just disappear. So, you know, my question is there some test that maybe staff could do, or some gallons per minute of water that we could say, you know, if somebody came out and installed a system and maybe it didn't get inspected, or it didn't get, or perhaps there was some question about the graded base. I mean, how many gallons per minute is there something we can allow to say, you know, instead of somebody getting caught over the weekend, and we come up with some amount where they could dump in their driveway or whatever they did and say that it meets the criteria? That's a couple things I had about it.
We hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Staff, you heard David's concerns. If you look at it, see if there's changes that need to be made.
Yeah, we can look at adding something about the subsurface conditions to the ordinance, yeah.
Yep. Any other comments? Okay. If not, then I guess that our workshop is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all for being here.